Next, we're going to have Fred Klonsky, who's right down here, who has just retired after nearly 30 years as a K-5 art teacher in Park Ridge. He served for 10 years as the president of the Park Ridge Education Association. He lives on the northwest side of Chicago. Fred.
Well, thanks. I want to thank Job for Justice for inviting me to come talk about the teacher pension issue, and I'm here to bring bad news, unlike my brother over here. The situation for teachers in the state of Illinois in terms of their pensions is pretty dire. For the last, well, let me start a different way. Because it's hard to get into the issues of percentages and monies and pensions, and it'll put you to sleep in about 5 minutes. But here's the essence of it. The Constitution of the state of Illinois guarantees that all public workers' pensions, particularly teacher pensions, shall not be diminished or impaired. Those are the words that are in the Constitution. And it doesn't say that it should not be impaired if the state of Illinois has failed to make their contribution to the state pension system for over 50 years. It doesn't say that it should not be diminished or impaired unless the state gives tax breaks to Sears and to the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. It doesn't say that it should not be, that the pension should not be diminished or impaired because in 2008 there was a financial crash. It says very clearly that it shall not be diminished or impaired.
Period.
And yeah, period. But in fact, all those other things have happened. And what's taking place is that the politicians in the state are using those facts to now make an attack on the pensioners. Not just, this began for teachers who were hired after January 1st of 2011. Any teacher that was hired into a teaching position after January 1st of 2011 has to work, first of all, until they're 67 years old. I just retired, I'm 64. If I had to work until with my kindergartners and first grade students until I was 67, having an assistant in the room would primarily mean helping me get off the floor rather than working with kids. Plus, when they retire, they'll only get 60% of what current teachers or retired teachers are presently receiving. That was the first attack. Now, what the General Assembly, what Governor Quinn, a Democratic governor, what the Speaker of the House, Michael Madigan, a Democratic speaker, in fact, chairman of the Democratic Party in Illinois, what John Cullerton, the Democratic president of the Illinois Senate, and what Rahm Emanuel, the Democratic mayor of the city of Chicago, what they are all working together on is a plan that has three components. One is that it's requiring both active and retired teachers to make a choice between receiving their health care or receiving their annual cost of living adjustment. So people like me are going to be put in a position of trying to decide whether we can afford to see a doctor or buy food. So that's on the table for when there's talk by the governor trying to get the General Assembly back into session in August, but certainly in the veto session after the election, where House members and Senate members are going to be much less interested in what you have to say, because it'll be after the election, because the veto session will come after the election. That's on the table. The second proposal, coming mainly from Michael Madigan, is to shift the pension obligation from the state to local school districts in municipalities. This means that for many school districts in the state who are already on financial watch are simply not going to be able to pay teachers because they're going to have to pay the pension obligation. And I can tell you, for example, in Park Ridge, where I was president of the local for 10 years, and we're presently in contract negotiations, the board is already using that as an excuse for offering nothing, for offering no raises for the next 3 years, even though the General Assembly hasn't passed that yet. So that's the second attack, is to shift the cost obligation to Batavia or to St. Charles or to Geneva, that the local school districts who are already strapped financially would take over for the state and the money that was promised. The third one, the third attack is 64 makes me forget things. Well, let me just take a step back for a second. One is that you all know that teachers that really all public employees who pay into a retirement system don't receive Social Security. The state, if a private corporation had done what the state of Illinois has done for the past 50 years and not paid into the pension plan, even Ty Fainer, who's the lawyer and president of the corporate civic committee in Chicago, has said that the owners of those corporations would be indicted for doing exactly what the state of Illinois has done, which is to not pay what they owe to the state pension plan. The teachers do. We all pay 9.4% of our salary into that teacher retirement system, and have paid it every 2 weeks. In my case, for 30 years. And so now I'm faced with a situation where I'm going to have to make these kind of choices. So what can you do about this? One is, I think, it's very important that between now and the November election, that you contact with your House member and your Senate, your Senate representative, to let them know that you believe that a contract is a contract, that a deal is a deal, that a promise that was made to teachers when we were first hired is an obligation that they have when we retire, and to make it clear that your vote will depend on what they do. In most cases, we're not getting straight answers from our House representatives and senators. They're not willing now, before the election, to really be clear on whether they support or oppose these reforms in our pension plan. But I think we have to hold their feet to the fire. And if I haven't made it clear, this is not a partisan issue. It's the damage, and this is not Wisconsin. In Wisconsin, the fight against around pensions and collective bargaining rights, in some ways was clear. It was a head-on attack on collective bargaining rights by the Republican Senate and by the Republican Governor Scott Walker. But in Illinois, they're much slicker than that. One, it's being done by Democrats. And it's not a head-on assault, it's chipping away at things little by little. So for example, you have teachers, and I think there'll be someone talking about the CTU and the Chicago situation. But here you had people come from out of state, like Jonah Edelman and Stanford Children, and they drop off a couple $100,000 on 9 or 10 legislators, and they get Michael Madigan to set up an ed reform committee, and they raise the bar a little bit on what it takes to get a strike authorization vote. Not 50% like it would be anywhere else, 50% plus one, but 75%, because they thought this would be a bar that the CTU could never achieve, and of course they did. They not only passed 75%, but 98% of all those voted in favor of the strike authorization. But they were surprised that wasn't what their expectation was. Same thing around the pension plan. They're not at this point going head on against our pensions. They're chipping away a little bit here and a little bit there. And if we don't make a fight over this, if we don't stand and fight, we may lose. Of course, the CTU they may not win, but the difference is that the change in things now is that unions are beginning, I think, to fight. That it's better to struggle and sometimes lose on some issues than not struggle at all. And so our fight around the pension plan is around the plan of the Democrats in the state to undermine public employee pensions is to say this is the line in the sand, that we maybe we'll lose, maybe we'll win, but the time for giving in on everything is over, and that we're going to make a fight on this one, and with your help, we'll be able to hold on to it. Thanks.